Okay, welcome to our beginner workshop on discovered attacks. So, a discovered attack is where one piece moves out of the way of another piece so that the piece in the back can deliver an attack. What does that mean? Well, so in this example right here, so this queen is looking at the king, right? So there's a couple ways we can throw checks, right? We can just attack with a piece, right? This queen move here, queen d7 check, is a check. It's an option. But we also can throw checks by moving our pieces out of the way of our other pieces. So in this case, it's our turn. We're in check, so we actually can't play queen d7, even though it would be okay. It would just be trading queens. Not great. We're in check, so we have to deal with the check, right? How do we deal with the check? Knight f6 check does not work because we're in check. What can we do? We have to address the check here. So instead, the discovered attack looks like this. Petrosian's on it. Yep, you got it. Is knight takes g5 check. So again, this is beginner stuff. If you're looking at this going, this is super easy. It's not easy if we're just starting out. So the reason this works is because typically knights are more valuable than pawns. So you don't want to just give your knight up for a pawn. But right here, the reason it works is because the queen delivers check when you move the knight. So that move right there is a check. So you can safely take the pawn because you're actually checking not only with the knight, but also with the queen. And whenever two pieces are checking the king at the same time, that's a double attack, double check, and the king now has to move. You cannot sufficiently deal with both of these threats. You can't capture this because this is still checking. There's nothing that can capture this. You could block it, but you can't just block it because the knight's still checking. This is a complicated example to start with. But it's fine. Because we get it. Right? Okay. Moving on. Ooh, this is fun. Okay. So what did the king just do? What did the king just do? Move from here to here. Right? So you always want to look at what's changed in the position, right? So, king has moved here. Discovered attacks. We're looking at ways we can move our pieces that create checks, right? So, is there any discovery in the position? Right here, there is. It's the queen looking here. The rook's in the way, so the king can legally capture that bishop because the queen is not covering this square. But since it's our turn, we can throw a check that's two things. It's a discovered attack, and it's a double attack. And what that looks like is this. Right, now, this is two checks at once. We're moving the rook out of the way of the queen, which is throwing a check, and we're also throwing a check with our rook. That's usually a really good thing to do. It can be a very powerful resource, especially because black cannot block in this position. You can't block. Even if you wanted to block here or block here, you can't because you have two checks you have to deal with at the same time. And whenever that happens, you have to move your king. So now we force the king up here. Our queen's still pointing here. It's now supported by the rook. We've got a nice little finishing move right there. Game over. Great. You're handling this so well. You're all so on top of this. This is like easy for you. Aha. What did we just lose here? We lost a bishop. Okay. Well, discoveries. Right? We're looking for discoveries all the time. Do we have a discovery in the position? Looks to me like we do. Right? This bishop is hiding behind our pawn, which means we can control when that bishop throws a check. And right now, there's nothing in front of the pawn, so we can move it. What happens when we move it? Well, this bishop's throwing a check. The pawn is covering this square. So the king can't do anything about the check. The rook could. Right? So push this, rook takes. But now we do have one final killer blow at our disposal, which is that when we push this pawn one more square, we can turn it into a queen. So right here, we can completely ignore the threat to the bishop because we have an even bigger threat of our own. Right, so we're gonna hang our bishop here. We're gonna say, I don't care. Take it. It's fine. Because I win. I just win. And it's over. Good job. You found all of that. Good for you. Discovered attacks. Once again, discovered attacks. All right. So, what's just happened? We've lost the pawn. Knight's moving into our side of the board. What do we have at our disposal? Do we have any discoveries in the position? Can we move one piece such that it discovers an attack against the king or another more valuable piece, perhaps? In this position, it looks like we do. It looks like this queen is looking at the king, which is a good sign. The bishop is in front of the queen, which is also a good sign. Bishop can move. Where should the bishop move to, then becomes the question. Well, move the bishop anywhere, you throw a check, which is great. The problem is, let's say you play bishop d3. They have bishop e7. And then it becomes a question of, well, what have you really gained here? Because this knight is looking at this. Yes, it protects against that attack, but it feels kind of like a missed opportunity. Is there a better square to put the bishop on? Well, is there a way to throw two checks at the same time? Becomes the question. The answer is, yes, there is. Take a second to look for it. See if you can find it. It is right there. Bishop b5 check is two checks. The bishop throws a check, and the queen throws a check at the same time. Like, remember, when two pieces are checking the king at the same time, what has to happen? The king has to move. You can't sufficiently solve both threats at the same time. The king will have to move. And once the bishop moves here, the queen is covering this whole file, and the bishop is covering the king's only other escape square. That's just it. That's game over. Boom. Right here. King cannot get out of check. Can't block here because this is still coming. You can't block here. Not there. There, because this is still coming. What a move. Okay, how do we feel about that? Good? I agree. Aha. Well, this looks bad because it looks like the knight's forking our rooks. Not great. Not a great spot to be in. What are we looking at? You know nothing about chess. Well, you're in the right place, Q. You're in the perfect place because we're learning today. So this is a situation where you can't save both of your rooks. Your rooks are forked by the knight, right? So you're going to lose one of your rooks. How do you deal with it? Well, actually, you just win the game here, believe it or not, because we have a discovery at our disposal. This rook staring at the king. Our bishop is in front of the rook, which means we can move it and throw a check. We can actually throw two checks at the same time if we want to. Can't we? Where would we throw two checks at the same time? What square would the bishop have to go to throw two checks at the same time? The move here is bishop g5 check. Because any of these bishop moves Bishop e3 check, bishop f4 check, bishop h6 check, for instance, even bishop e1. They all throw a check, but the problem is if you throw a discovered attack with this rook by moving the bishop out of the way, the knight just captures it. Knights are weaker than rooks. Rooks are more valuable than knights. You probably don't want to just give your rook up. But if you throw two checks at the same time, like this, there's a check and there's a check, your opponent does not have time to capture the rook because it's under threat twice. Bishop's attacking and the rook's attacking, which means the king has to move. We play this. The king has only one place it can go, right there. It can't come here because the bishop covers it. This entire file is covered by the rook. And now we have a nice way to slide into their position and finish the game off. Take a look. What's the move? What's screaming at you? What will be played to win the game? Hey, first-time chatter finds it. That's right. Rook e8. So then this whole thing, that threat of that fork, is just a complete blunder. Because we just win the game. You try to fork my rooks, I win your king. Son. That's how chess players talk. We are looking for discoveries. Discoveries are also, sometimes you can make a discovered attack and it feels like you're just hanging a piece. Like in this position right here, the timing or the what's the word I'm looking for? Tempo. Tempo is so important. Tempi. You win time. Time is the idea. Right, so it's going to feel like you're hanging your rook, but you're not. The reason is because this piece is pointing at the king. Bizarrely, both pieces you're moving here are going to be on pre, which means they're in danger of being captured. The wild thing is, though, because of how powerful discovered attacks are, especially discovered checks, black does not have time to deal with both threats in one move. So when we play rook e8, it's checkmate. The reason is because this is throwing a check once. This is throwing a check at the same time. You can't just capture the rook because the bishop's still throwing check. You can't move because there's no way to get out. You can't block because this is still throwing check. But both of those pieces are also attacked by other pieces. So it looks wrong, but it's right. This is just right there. Bam, game over. Chess is amazing. I don't know about y'all, but that's just so cool to me. Okay. Next. Problemo. Excuse you. So, discoveries. What do we have right now? So we're actually not looking at a discovered check right now. We're looking at a discovered attack. Same idea. We're not throwing a check. So what do we have? Are there discoveries in the position? Yes. Yes, there is. This rook hangs, right? It's not protected by anything. So they're trying to throw a pin here. So a pin is where a piece can't move, right? So black is trying to pin the bishop to the rook, right? That's what that move is saying. Oh, we're doing this. Your bishop's pinned. Haha. But I say to you, haha, I have a discovery at my disposal, which in this position looks a little like this. So the value of time, once again, is that when I play bishop e6 check, black has to address the check. You have to address it. You have no option. No choice. So this check against the king can't be addressed by this rook, which means that all of a sudden the f-file is just open, right? So I play bishop e6 check. The king moves, but now it's my turn, and I can just take this rook for free. Free rook. Yes. Okay. What happened? So white says, I can take this pawn. I can take the pawn on c6. That pawn's mine. Well, What are we looking for? We're looking for discoveries, right? So discovery is where one piece moves out of the way of another piece to throw a check or throw an attack, technically. So right here, once again, my opponent is saying, I can take this pawn, and your bishop can't move. Because if your bishop moves, I take your rook with check, right? Are they right? Is white right to capture this pawn? Can we prove them wrong? Yes, we can. Do we have any discoveries in the position? Yes, we do. A discovery is very closely related to a pin, it turns out. Because white is saying this bishop is pinned. And I'm saying, no, it's not. Because this bishop can come here and throw a check. Again, the value of time is everything when it comes to discoveries. We can play bishop takes e5 check. The reason is because when the king is in check, you have to address the check. You don't have a choice. You have to just hold everything over here and address the check. But now that the check's been addressed, so the king has moved, this rook is free. Yeah. That capture was a bad move because of this discovery. So now the king is under attack, but so is the rook. You have to deal with this threat first. So they do. And we gobble up the rook for free. Next, please. We're looking for discoveries, right? So, what discoveries do we have in this position? Ooh, Chefy Boy Eric is looking for those discoveries and seeing what's up. Yeah. So, again, a pin looks a lot like a discovery, depending on which side of the board you're sitting. So white's saying, yeah, this bishop is pinned to the queen. It's not really because the rook's covering it also, so like whatever. But what I'm seeing here is the queen is not protected by any piece. It's just sitting here hanging on its own, chilling. Right? So what does that mean? Well, it means if we could attack this queen in a way that it couldn't escape, we could win it for free, right? Just capture it. We'd like to do that, right? How can we do that? Well, Chefy Boy Eric in chat here said, what about bishop e5 check? And I say to you, what about bishop e5 check? Because that, again, really illustrates the value of time. White suddenly has to deal with this check. The queen is hanging. So what do? Do we throw another check? Or do we eat the queen knowing we're losing our bishop? This is actually key. There is a right answer here and there is a wrong answer. Should we play bishop takes c4 check? Or should we play queen takes d6? What do we think? Matt says eat the queen. Why, Matt? Why should we eat the queen? What happens if we don't eat the queen? Because typically, yeah, you want to try to take the biggest morsel, for lack of a better word, when you can. Right? You have the opportunity to take the queen. You probably want to do it. Yes, it hangs your bishop, but the queen is more valuable than the bishop. Yes. But in this case, there's actually something even worse if you don't take the queen right now. If you play bishop takes c4 check, the knight comes down here and recaptures. And then, yep, Walking Tebow found it. And then the queen used to hang. In this position, the queen hangs. There's nothing defending it. If you take here with a check and the knight takes here, suddenly the knight is covering the queen. So then at the end of that whole line, all you've done is sacrifice the bishop for a pawn. You've won nothing. What you have to do instead is you have to take the queen now. Knowing that you hang the bishop, that's fine. So walk it back. This check is good. This pawn push makes a lot of sense. But if you go for it, I'll just show it, just so you see it. So you push this here. If you capture here, look at that bar. Look at that bar slide all the way down. Look at how precise you have to be. Even in a simple, like this is rated, what's this puzzle rated? 400. Puzzle rated 400. If you do this, suddenly you're just losing. Because knight takes. And now you take this back. Well, I take this back with a threat. Come with the rook next. Be a huge error. That would swing the whole game in white's favor. Discoveries. That's what we want. Discovered attacks. Okay. This, again, we're looking at what's the difference between a pin and a discovery. It's very, very slight depending on who you ask, and maybe there's nothing. Maybe there's no difference. Sometimes it's one, sometimes it's the other. This bishop does look pretty pinned. You know, that does look... You probably can't do that because then you just hang this, and that's real bad. That's real bad. Then we're just bishop for queen. We don't want to do that. So this discovery probably isn't the best. You get this that's a check though, so it's a problem. You can't allow this capture because it's a check. But what can you do? Well, do we have other discoveries that are not against the king here? Because this is looking pretty bad. And I would say yes, we do. It looks kind of bad. Like all I can see, it doesn't look great, but it does look better. And I'm not even 100% sure that I have solved this all the way through, but it looks like this queen hangs. So can we throw a check or do something that distracts our opponent, in this case probably a check, to grab this? Even though the rook is looking down here, can we find something? Rook sack. Yeah, I'm thinking it's got to be rook f1 check. After the king takes, what I don't know is if there's another intermezzo you have to play first, because this just looks really bad. But maybe it's not. Maybe that's the whole thing, is maybe you just win a queen and it's fine, right? So it's got to be rook f1 check. And then here, you know, the problem with any other move other than queen takes e3 is that the queen will get out of that situation. Like this is a part where you have to go for the morsel, grab the big morsel when you can, because you won't have another chance. If you try to do something like, you know, bishop e2 check, well, queen takes, and suddenly it doesn't hang anymore. Gotta do that. So even though this is coming next, you probably just hide on the H file. You're probably okay, right? So like, what do I mean by discovery? I'm glad you asked. So with discovery, I'm going to show you right now. Here we go. Here comes the discovery. So a discovery is where one of your pieces, one of my pieces, moves out of the way of a piece behind it to allow that piece's attack to occur. So one fundamental rule in chess is that my pieces can't look through my own pieces or my opponent's pieces. So right now, this queen is not delivering a check because of the pawn here. If I were to remove the pawn here, suddenly the queen is delivering a check. Right now it isn't, but right now it is. Like we capture the pawn this way, and suddenly the queen is throwing a check. That's called a discovery. So we are working on that today, and we're looking at ways to use discoveries, discovered attacks, checks, that kind of thing, to our advantage. This discovery in this position is very valuable because we win on the next move. Right now, we take here. That's a check. Actually, not in the next move, but to the black blocks. But again, this is just giving a bishop. We can take this for free because then we can slide in after and deliver a checkmate. So, to answer your question, Courtney, the discovery happens right here. When this pawn recaptures, I don't know what it's doing. It's capturing a knight. Okay, the pawn captures a knight. When the pawn captures that way, in such a way that this queen suddenly is throwing a check. The reason it's valuable is because you can do two things at once. That's why they're so powerful, is because discoveries typically allow you to do two things at once. This one's a little more straightforward. It's more just sort of like, I'm going to win because if there's a pawn up here, you're usually, and this is a good sign, having a pawn all the way up here, trapping the king back here, and then trying to block, desperation. Nothing else black can do. There's nothing black can do to stop this checkmate. They're going to throw pieces at it, but ultimately, it's just losing. Bada bing. So, thanks for joining us for our beginner workshop today. I hope it was informative and interesting and honestly fun. Next week, we're back with another one, and hope to see you then.